welcome back to our Advent reflection. Today we're diving into something truly powerful, something at the very heart of the entire Bible, really. It's this idea of God's enduring faithfulness and how it all points to one thing, the promise of the Messiah. So let's get into it.
I mean, have you ever really waited for a promise? Just think about it for a second. That feeling, the anticipation, holding on to hope for something you were told is definitely coming. That feeling right there, that's what our story is all about today. So, to really get what Christmas is all about, we've got to go way back. I'm talking back to the very beginning, to a single promise that literally shaped the entire history of God's people. You see, from the very start, humanity has had this deep longing, right? For redemption, for peace, for just being right with God. And this wasn't some random feeling. It was actually planted in our hearts by God himself. If you look at the earliest pages of the Bible, you see this ache for things to be made whole again. And right there, woven into that ache, was a promise. The promise of someone who would come and fix things, a redeemer. So, who was this redeemer they were waiting for? Well, he was known as the Messiah. In Hebrew, that means the anointed one. This was the one who was going to save God's people. And for hundreds and hundreds of years, this one promise, it was everything. It was their anchor, the absolute center of their hope, no matter what they went through. But you have to wonder, right? How did that hope stay alive for so long? I mean, we're talking about generations of hardship, of waiting, sometimes in total silence. How did they not give up? Well, the answer is simple, but profound. God's unwavering faithfulness. And what's so amazing is that God's faithfulness didn't depend on them being perfect, not at all. Even when the people of Israel messed up, when they wandered off, when they doubted him, or when they were suffering, he never ever abandoned his plan. He just kept weaving that big, beautiful story of salvation, patiently and purposefully, thread by thread. And to keep that hope alive, to fan the flames, God would speak through his prophets. He started giving them little clues, revealing bits and pieces of the plan. It started with this absolutely stunning vision from the prophet Isaiah. And get this, it wasn't a vision of some mighty general or a conquering king. Nope, it was a child, a son who would be given for us. Suddenly, this huge cosmic promise becomes incredibly personal. Then another prophet, Micah, comes along and adds another brushstroke to this growing picture. And it's a detail nobody would have ever guessed. This promised ruler, this special child, he wasn't going to come from a big, fancy capital city. He was going to come from Bethlehem, a tiny, kind of insignificant town. You see what God was doing? He was already showing that his kingdom would be built on humility. And then Jeremiah adds another layer, and this one goes even deeper. He saw that the Messiah's work wasn't just going to be political, on the outside. It was going to be a whole new covenant and internal restoration, something that would change people from the inside out, writing God's law right on their hearts. So think about it, a child from a small town who's going to bring about this deep inward change. The picture was really starting to come into focus. So for centuries, these promises just echoed. Generation after generation held on to them. And then, one silent night, everything changed. The promise became a person. And this is where things get really wild. Look at the contrast here. The expectation, a mighty political king, right? A triumphant conqueror who would just show up and win. But the reality? Oh, it was so different. It was a helpless baby, a humble manger, a quiet, almost hidden arrival. And right there, in that huge gap between expectation and reality, you see the very heart of God. He chose humility to deal with our pride. He chose what looked like weakness to show us what true strength is. This quiet arrival wasn't a mistake or a failure. It was a complete redefinition of power. God was showing the world that his kingdom doesn't come through force, but through love and sacrifice. So if there's one thing to take away, it's this. The birth of Jesus is the greatest proof, the ultimate sign that God keeps his word. He always does, but he does it on his own terms, in his own perfect timing, and often in ways that completely surprise us and turn our expectations upside down. Okay, so this incredible story of waiting and fulfillment, it isn't just history, right? It's not something dusty on a shelf. It connects directly to our lives, to you and me, right here, right now. So let's just take a moment to make this personal. I want you to think, where in your own life are you in a season of waiting? What are you waiting for?
Where are you holding on to a promise from God, just longing to see it come to pass? You know, this is what Advent is all about. It's a season that actually validates our waiting. It gives us permission to acknowledge those times of delay or confusion or silence when we're praying for healing or for guidance or just for peace, and the answer feels like it's taking forever. This season, it whispers to us, hey, it's okay to wait. You're part of a much bigger story, a long line of people who have waited faithfully. And it's in that waiting that we really learn some incredible truths. 3 things to hold on to. Number 1, God's timing is perfect, even when it feels painfully slow to us. Number 2, His promises are rock solid. They are sure. They will not fail. And number 3, His faithfulness isn't just for a little while, it endures forever.
So, as we start to wrap this up, let's really lock in on the core message here.
You know, as Christians, our hope is kind of like an anchor, and it's tied to 2 huge, incredible events. The Messiah came once, humbly, as a baby in a manger in Bethlehem. That's the first one. And we have this amazing promise that He will come again, but this time in glory. And our lives, our entire lives are lived in that space, in the between. We live in this incredible tension of hope. We look back with so much gratitude at the promise that was fulfilled in that manger, and at the same time, we're looking forward with total confidence to the promise of His return. And we can be confident. Why? Because the God who was faithful way back then is the exact same God who is faithful to us today. So let's close with a prayer. If you would, just join me in this. Lord, You are the God who keeps His promises. As we journey through this Advent season, would You please strengthen our trust in Your faithfulness? Help us to see Your hand at work, especially when the path ahead is unclear. May the promise of the Messiah fill our hearts with hope, with peace, and with courage. Remain with us, O Lord, as we wait in joyful expectation for the coming of Your Son. Amen.